Hi, it's the week of July 11th. It's a Friday, and it's going to be short week Friday of July 11th. I'm going to make sure all of my videos today are at least no more than 10 minutes. We're going to make sure that's one of the things because there's so many videos on the list today. And I guess we're going to start off with awareness, looking at problems from multiple points of view, angles, and different kinds of reasons. I guess in a way you can call this devil's advocates, looking from things from different points of view, and that's what I do oftentimes in many videos. I guess in many cases, this is a rationalization. And just to be clear, I'm not going to make these videos faster. I'm just going to make sure they're more concise and I don't go off on loose ends and try to make up for, where I forget something or go out on a loose end somewhere. But anyway, yeah, awareness, looking at problems from multiple points of view. That's obviously something that I'm obviously been advocating for, at least in my own videos, something I've been trying to get across more. And I've been trying to make sure I can get all the points across at once, make sure I can connect all these ideas at once. And I think that's really good for making a point, conveying a point. Sometimes you have to use different analogies and metaphors that many other people can understand. Use something, the least common denominator, like I've mentioned before. Make sure you can appeal to the least common denominator and use relatable examples and metaphors and analogies to get the point across. In that case, you can have more people relate to your not necessarily plight, but your argument, and you can get the point across more reasonably and more rationally, or at least more thoroughly when you're making a point that's not only something that people can relate to, but something that's more realistic and understandable, which is obviously something people can relate to more. But yeah, from different angles, different points of view, awareness, looking at problems from multiple points of view, views, angles, reasons. Um, So yeah, awareness, knowing exactly where you're coming from, I guess from the angle that you're trying to attack an idea from. And I guess really what it comes down to is the argument. That's the thing, that it's about convincing people of anything, whatever it may be, frivolous, pointless, something very important to get something across is to make sure you can make your point, be aware of the point you're making, and it's the argument that means more than anything to get the point across. So as long as you know what you're talking about, you use reasonable examples, you describe it thoroughly enough, and you disguise it some way, in some way, almost using the disguise to cover the emotional aspects of something, as to not let the slightly clever understand that you're trying to fool them into believing or falling for whatever line of logic or reasoning that you're trying to convince them of. It's always obviously something you need to subvertly, enter into an argument. Something that you need to be very sly about. You need to make sure it's very, very hidden, yeah, for a lack of a better word or description. You need to make sure you know exactly what you're doing. And I guess the argument is the thing that matters most, and how you argue, how you make the point, um, the point you want to make to convince a person of something, that the thing that you're saying means something, that you're trying to convince them of a truth, and being aware of different points of view and why people believe. Yeah, that's another thing I want to attempt to tackle, is why do other people believe certain things, and why do they believe what they believe? And that's where the devil's advocate comes from. That's why some people always often recommend, why don't you argue from the opposite side, or point of view that you're always arguing against, and see if you can get something across that way, and see if that can do you any good. In many cases, it can or it can't. Sometimes you can't argue, but you're going to argue. You're going to see how people come up with these fallacious arguments, and how people often go to these similar arguments because there's nowhere else to go. If you play devil's advocate against against a winning argument, against an argument that's a brick wall, a steel wall, an infinite wall where you can't ever penetrate, you can't even penetrate it once, or even the slightest inch or slightest amount of distance, you can't even penetrate. When you're doing that, you realize how they're sort of backed in the corners, not even necessarily backed in the corners, but how they're backed in the corners logically, where even if they are not in denial, which in many cases they are, and they go automatically to those examples you see at where people typically go when they use these examples to get their point, or they use these go-to arguments on the losing side of the battle, and they use those, and you see how where they're coming from. If you're thinking like that, put yourself in their shoes and see exactly where they're coming from, and use that to your advantage to make the argument a little more persuasive, or use that as an experience to understand exactly how to get to people, at least logically, and the points you need to make, and then understand maybe how you can, sprinkle in some emotion in there as well to make sure that the point gets thoroughly described and tackled, to make sure it's something that you can easily use to win the battle on the right side of the battle, especially when you're arguing for the truth. Obviously, this is it's the idea of arguing for the truth for the right side, and obviously logic explains the determined outwinner of the outcome of the person arguing the right side or the wrong side. The right side's going to win automatically by default, but obviously it takes the person arguing for the right side to make enough of a convincing argument that reinforces the true nature of existence and how it actually works, as opposed to arguing the losing side. That's how arguments are. A person can seem like they made a point, even if they're on the losing side, even though they use semantics to gain an advantage, even though what they were saying was a complete lie. A person can win an argument in a specific circumstance, but what they were saying was wrong. Just because a person was wrong and they won and they came out on top and, convincing a person, okay. It's because the person on the right side that knew, say, contriving an example on the right side was not convincing enough, or forgot that a point they could have made to prove the wrong person wrong. Like I've mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're getting off, or they say, oh, you get off an argument, or whatever it may be. If someone says that, oh, you just want to have confrontation, you get off on argument, that's all you want to do. I'm sure many people have heard that before. That's not the case, though. If you're on the winning side, if you're trying to argue for the truth, you're just getting off on trying to prove the wrong person wrong. And that's what you're trying to do. It's about proving the wrong person wrong and making sure you can get the point across, right? So it's about making sure you can prove the wrong person wrong. And if I get off on it, then that just happens to be something that comes along with it. It comes along with winning, or fighting for the winning side. You might as well get something a little extra, get a little treat for fighting for the right side, and proving the person wrong, getting your little high, your little fix of instant gratification out of proving someone wrong, who's wrong. And and acting, on the opposite side, when a person's arguing for a lie or lying, and they get off on lying, they're pathologically lying, they're getting off on the wrong thing, something that's detrimental and has no use, and only has use in trying to be destructive and completely destroy anything that has any meaningful foundation, at least when it comes to portraying a truth, when it comes to reality, in any argumentative thing. So yeah, it's about convincing people of the truth. And if you're on the winning side, that's obviously something you need to use to your advantage. And if you happen to get off on it, okay, that's something that comes along with it, and that's a good thing. And yeah, I guess that's really it. Hopefully, you're fighting for the right side. And that's something we should all be striving for. Yeah. And like always, I always feel like I've forgotten something, but I don't want to sit here and dwell on that. So yeah, it's about being aware, playing devil's advocate, making sure the ideas get across thoroughly enough, and making sure you can get to a person and you can understand exactly where a person's coming from, and be aware and all that good stuff, I guess. So I think that's all I need to mention in this video. If I have anything else to mention, I can mention it in another video. So thank you, and until next time. Bye.